My journey on the island was moving along steadily. The few days after our little trip to the waterfall were pretty uneventful. The Lamia gave subtle hints that she wanted to talk about what happened in greater depth, why I got so upset over that name. But I pretended not to catch on. No offense to her, but it was my mind and my business. Besides, what good does it do bringing up the past anyway? As our time together progressed, I began to learn just what kind of person this Lamia truly was. At first, she was intimidating, fully intended to kill me without a shred of remorse, I imagine. But now I think it was all just for show. True, I had only known her 3 days at the time, but there was something about her when I'd look her in the eye. When I look at her, I don't see a monster. I see a girl who's probably been alone on this island for far too long. One night, I heard her wrestle in her sleep. All the while, I could feel the anger and frustration welling up inside her. My first instinct was to try and help. But how would I even begin to, when I understood so little? Building up the courage, I simply ran my hand across her tail in a vain attempt to provide just a smidgen of comfort. It was the least I could do to help set her mind and body at ease, if only for the rest of the night. Surprisingly, she seemed to relax after that, her scrunched up face and tense body returning to a normal, peaceful rest as her coils pushed into my embrace as if wanting more of my treatment. I smiled and breathed a sigh of relief, glad I found a way to calm her down so we could both rest easy. After that experience, I knew. Behind that rough exterior and tough girl act is a person. Not a predator, not a master, but a person. A genuine person who desires interaction just like everyone else, even if just a little bit. She'd never admit it, of course, but I'm content knowing that there truly is a heart inside her, secretly longing to reach out, much like my own. The day after was pretty quiet. We performed our morning routine, and for the first time since day one, we hadn't spoken to one another. When day turned to evening, we sat on the branches of her tree, trying to relax, but secretly bored out of our minds. We still had not exchanged a single word. She probably thought I'd be the first to break the ice, just as I thought the same about her. I occasionally glanced over in her direction and saw that she was just resting against the tree trunk, gazing out over the jungle landscape, letting out sigh after sigh. Seemed she was just as bored as I was. If things continued on like this, I'd very well be dead without learning what I came here to find out. With that in mind, it was high time I spoke up and broke the awkward tension between us. Can't sleep?
Not trying to. It's too early.
How can you tell? The moon and stars are out.
My body and mind tell me when it's time to sleep. I've acclimatized well to this island to the point where every day has become routine. However, since you've arrived, things are different, and I'm not quite sure how to handle it.
I suppose if I've been living here all alone, I'd probably feel the same way. But I don't think my being here has been your main concern. What's really bothering you?
You wouldn't understand.
Oh, really? Try me.
Perhaps another time. I don't feel like talking about it.
Alright, if you don't want to talk, then we can walk. Come on, let's get out of this tree for a while.
You want to go out there this late? It's cold and dark. Besides, there's nothing to see down there at night.
Oh, come on. I'm bored to death just sitting up here, and clearly so are you. You aren't just going to stare off into space until you fall asleep, are you?
How do you think I've gotten asleep all these years?
Yeah, but that was before I came along. Now think. We're two people bored and awake under the moonlight. If we're not leaving the tree, surely there must be something we can do to pass the time.
Before you suggest something stupid, I have an idea that might suffice. I could tell you a story.
A story?
One that you will find most illuminating, I think. The tale I'm about to tell you is an important part of my race's history, and one we've carried with us long before you or I were born. So keep that in mind before you form any opinions.
I understand. I promise to keep my lips sealed until the end.
Good. You're learning your place, and that's expected of you. Very nice. Now, on with the tale, otherwise known as the Tale of Beginnings. Long ago, in ancient times when pharaohs ruled and pyramids were at their apex, this world was home to many creatures, animals and humans alike. However, neither side expected the arrival of a completely new species, a combination of the two inhabitants. That's right, Lamias. Half serpent, half woman, possessing traits of both human and animal. Our ancestors, those who slithered into this world from out of the sands of Egypt, wandered through the vast deserts in search of food and water, a refuge from the harsh winds and scorching sun. After days of endless trudging over hills, they saw a giant shape in the distance. A pyramid nearing completion stood tall as a beacon to guide our people to their salvation. With what strength they could muster, those 10 brave Lamias crawled through the thick sands until they arrived at the home of the pyramid, a human civilization. The ancestors weren't sure what to expect. The last thing to cross their minds was an entire species. What they saw were people moving around on legs instead of tails. However, the look of exhaustion and pain from these humans were worse than their own condition. The group attempted to communicate with the villagers, who were shocked and dumbstruck at the mere sight of them. Before Lamia could even open her mouth to speak, a couple humans dropped to their knees and bowed before her and the rest of the group. Within minutes, dozens upon dozens of humans followed suit until an entire crowd encompassed them, kneeling and chanting in what seemed like worship. They believed the Lamias to be goddesses of half-human form. That same Lamia tapped one man's shoulder, interrupting his chant to ask him if he might direct her and her sisters to a place where they could rest from their travels. He appeared to understand her as he stood upright and happily escorted them through the crowds, up the streets, and into the palace where their king ruled over this desert. They made their way to the throne room, decorated in gold from top to bottom. And more was there to be found upon the royal garbs of the man who called himself ruler of Egypt. Whether that was true or just a simple scare tactic, it didn't matter. It was his kingdom, and my ancestors showed him the proper respect. All they could think of was how one man could live in luxury while his people worked and starved outside his walls. As the Lamias lined up and bowed before the throne, the king stood to address them. After allowing them to rise, the king asked why a beautiful group such as themselves would appear before the throne. While the rest of his people saw my ancestors as some prophesized goddesses sent to bring peace and prosperity, this man saw them as a ruse, a trick of some sort to fool him into handing over the throne. When all that was asked of him was food and shelter, he happily obliged and saw to it that their needs were met. However, he asked that one Lamia stay with him. The one who had spoken to the man in the street volunteered to stay behind and talk with the king. It was the least she could do after the warm welcome he and his subjects provided. Unfortunately, things began to turn rather grim after he ordered all his guards and servants to leave with the rest of the group. Once the door shut, the rotten excuse for a king pulled a dagger from his robe and grabbed her violently by the shoulders, the blade inches from her neck. He demanded she tell him who she was sent by. He was entirely convinced she was there to seize power on behalf of his rivals. Somehow she knew without having prior knowledge of weapons that whatever he was threatening her with would steal her life and the lives of her sisters. Without thinking, she gazed deep into the king's eyes, her pupils shrinking down to nothing. The man was so consumed in anger, he was not prepared for her to strike back in any way, shape, or form. It didn't take long for the man to get lost in her mesmerizing display, the dagger falling from his grip along with his frustrations. Her fear turned to confusion as the fool's legs buckled underneath, the royal idiot brought to his knees where he belonged. She tried waving her hand in front of his face and speaking, but to no avail. He just knelt before her, his mouth agape and eyes spiraling in a continuous loop. It didn't make sense until she turned her head toward her reflection in the shining gold wall. She was slightly unsettled by the sight of her own eyes spiraling. And yet, she was in a completely different state of mind compared to this murderer. Her attention was drawn back to him when he had addressed her as his mistress, requesting she give him an order unless she enjoyed seeing him on his knees. The power, this new sensation she felt enveloped her entire being. She had strength and influence over his mind now, and with this ability, she could keep her sisters safe from men like him. But why stop there, she thought. Pretending to act like a ruler, she placed her hand over his forehead and explained to him that his actions against her life is an insult to a goddess such as herself, and cannot be forgiven so easily. You are unworthy to lead these kind-hearted people, she said. Unworthy to be king of anything when such cowardice and greed runs through your veins. If he truly wanted to seek penitence and serve her, the fool need only hand his reign over to her, and her family will take his place on the throne, spending their days removing the stain he left upon this world. The man stupefyingly obliged with her order, and once again reached to pick up his dagger, turning the blade upon himself. Before she had a chance to react, he struck the blade deep within his chest, his face twisted in pain. She took him into her arms and slowly removed the dagger, throwing the bloody weapon to the side. She asked him why he took his own life. And his only response, his last words, "You'll be a glorious queen." With the wretched man gone, the people rejoiced and happily accepted my ancestors as his successor. The Lamia who hypnotized the king was chosen to lead, and from that day forward she was revered as Queen Nazura, goddess of peace. She later discovered why the king had killed himself instead of obeying her command. The throne was traditionally passed down through blood. When a ruler dies, their heir is next in line. However, this king never took a wife, no children. None ever survived coming into the world, and his one and only brother passed the throne onto him before passing on. Essentially, the only way he could relinquish his power to her was to kill the last remaining bloodline and allow the people to choose their leader. It was rather grim that a man had to die for a Lamia to take her seat on the throne, but it was necessary to bring about a better world for her family and her human subjects. She would reshape their lives and bring about a new era of peace and tranquility. She would be their sovereign.
So, your race dates all the way back to ancient Egypt? I would have gone on way more archaeological digs out there if I'd known. So, what about you then? Do you have that power too?
I was, born without it. The power is hereditary, and when I reached the age where Lamia can utilize it, all I could do was read memories of anyone I touched. My abilities evolved as I grew older, but as far as I know, I'm the only Lamia who can mentally interact with minds on such a personal level. In spite of that, I still see myself as a defect without that power.
Lacking the ability to control minds doesn't make you defective. You are what you are. Nothing can change that. And if you ask me, I think what you have makes you unique. You're one of a kind.
Well, I guess. It doesn't matter anyway. I'm all that's left.
I know that, but still you're...
I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Yeah, I get it. Sorry. So, how about that walk?
This again? We were actually having a nice moment for once and you had to ruin it.
All I'm suggesting is for once, could we just break from the routine and, I don't know, have a little fun?
There's a time and place for that, and it's certainly not at night, when there's nothing to do but sleep.
And yet here we are, wide awake, arguing about taking a damn walk. For the last time, why can't we do anything but sit on a branch after sunset?
Because I don't want to.
No. If it was that simple, you would have told me the first time I asked. There's something else. Some deep reason why you refuse to leave this tree after sunset. You're scared. Something about the evening frightens you, and you're too stubborn to tell me what it is. Am I getting warm?
Enough. I'm done arguing. This whole discussion is pointless. Go.
What?
Go. Go on your walk. I won't stop you. Just do me a favor and don't get lost.
You're really letting me go?
As long as you're here in the morning, I don't care what you do.
I reached out past the branch and took hold of the nearest vine, taking one last glance back at the Lamia, while she looked back out into the jungle, refusing to even turn my way. I thought about thanking her, but the tension between us was way too fresh that doing so really wouldn't make a difference. With one deep breath, I let my feet slip off the branch and I gradually descended down the vine with ease, until I reached the base of the tree. I searched around for any sign of danger, but with the moon as my only source of light, I couldn't see much beyond the path in front of me. It was a tad unsettling, but I've trudged through worse. Besides, I was only taking a short stroll. What could go wrong? What is this? I couldn't move. The pain in my stomach was too intense for me to even stand up. All I could do was ride this out, whatever it was. Just when I was about to lose hope, I felt a familiar sensation wrap around my torso, and in no time I levitated off the ground, ascending back up into the branches. About halfway up was when the pain finally ceased, and I could breathe again with no trouble. And of course the first thing I was greeted with was a big, smug grin.
Welcome back. How was your little stroll?
What the hell was that?
Pardon. I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
I was at the base for only a couple of minutes. I take one step and next thing I know, I am on my knees, choking to death.
Well, I can't say I have the slightest idea what could have caused this. But the important thing is, now you're safe and we know not to take any more foolish trips at night, right?
Right.
Come on. Let's calm you down a little, shall we? Lean back.
Excuse me?
You heard me. Just lie back against me. I promise I won't bite. Might nibble here or there, though. Joking.
How's this?
Perfect. Now just relax. How does that feel? Better?
Much. Not to complain, but why?
Can't a master treat her servant in any way she wishes? You're in pain, and I chose to be the remedy.
But this just doesn't seem like you, is all. Considerate, hospitable, you even told a joke. Why are you really doing this?
Repaying the favor for last night. You think I didn't notice your hand massaging my tail?
I wasn't massaging. I was just... I just didn't want to wake you up.
Well, regardless, it was very kind of you, and even a bit sweet. And now we're even.
I guess we are. Thank you.
Fool. I was just going to say that.
So many stars out tonight. Too many to count.
I tried to once when I was very little. Every time I looked up into the stars, I'd dream of being up there, just flying through the night sky without a care in the world. My mother would come tell me it was time for bed, but I wanted to stay up until I had counted them all. I got frustrated once because she came in and I lost count. To calm me down, she'd tell me a story. My mother always had a way of getting me immersed into the story, narrating in such a way where I felt like I was living in that fantasy world.
She sounds like an amazing mother.
She was. My mother was the only one that thought I was special, even when everyone called me a mistake. She'd say I would always be her daughter no matter what. I miss her terribly.
I'm sorry. I would have loved to meet her.
Believe it or not, she would have liked you, I think. Mother could always sense a person's true self just by looking into their eyes. She always knew how to see the good in people. There's no one in this world who can compare to her, in my opinion. I wish I could have told her that. At least once. Instead, I was a selfish child. I didn't deserve someone as sweet as she was.
You can't change the past. All you can do is look toward the future. Wide open and full of possibilities. I bet wherever your mom is now, she'd be proud of you.
How is it that a mouth so big can say something so sweet?
Maybe because humans can be just as wise and sweet as a Lamia can.
Perhaps you're right. You know, I've been meaning to tell you something.
Oh? What is it?
Earlier I said things are different now with you in my possession, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. You, a human, dropped into my life, and for the first time I vented my anger instead of bottling it all up. I don't want to admit this, to you or myself, but it's nice. This, talking. So, I guess what I'm really trying to say is thank you. I wasn't so keen on it before, but I actually enjoy our talks. It's preferable than just staring at nothing in silence. Doing so today reminded me just how awful it is. So, whenever you want to talk, don't be afraid to open that big mouth of yours. alright?
Same goes for you. But in all seriousness, I'm glad you told me that. I was afraid my being here had unsettled you to such a degree that you no longer wish to speak to me.
It wasn't for a lack of trying.
Point is, I'm relieved that you feel comfortable talking like this. And I'm sorry for the pointless arguments that have made up the bulk of our conversations.
I'll say this much. It certainly livens things up a bit. But there can certainly be too much of a good thing. I think it's time we got some sleep.
For once, I agree with you.
Not that you need any help, but would you mind if I hummed you a little tune? Next to storytelling, my mother would sing me to sleep, especially when all the stars were out. I figured it'd be a waste not to on a gorgeous night like this.
I'd love to hear it.
You asked to see me.
Indeed. Thank you for coming on such short notice.
You all made it pretty clear in our last meeting that too much contact between us is inadvisable.
All the more reason to keep this conversation brief. Time is money, of which we're in short supply at the moment.
Unfortunately, yes, we need to discuss with you our recent decision to counteract these troubling times. As you know, over the years, Avatech Corporation's stock price has been declining, and this year especially it has reached an all-time low. We've decided to downsize, cut more departments, primarily our unsuccessful research projects.
Are they no longer turning a profit?
You can say that again. The amount of money we've spent funding these projects is just too immense, no matter how many cuts we make.
I see. In that case, why discuss this with me? Dr. Erswick is project lead. I can page him if you'd like to.
That won't be necessary. We just wanted you to be the first to know. See, it'd be a waste of time dragging the lead scientist in here just to tell him the project is useless, garbage, a waste in every definition of the word, blah 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 blah, tears of sadness. If everything was that easy at this company, we wouldn't be in this damn slump.
Couldn't agree more. While Dr. Erswick's theories are impressive, the results of his experiments will not benefit the company in the slightest.
In short, Project Ascension is a failure. The research, given your annual reports, is extensive, but most of it is just unproven theory.
We provided a considerable amount of funding for this, as was requested by Mr. Avalon many years ago. But now that he's retired and relinquished all control of the company to us, we no longer think a money-draining lost cause project is in the company's best interest.
That makes sense. What of my contract then?
Oh, not to worry. This decision in no way affects your contract with the company. Despite what our official public records state, you are Avatech's most vital asset.
We'd be fools to let go of such miraculous potential. Our business is still alive thanks to your flawless ability at gathering intel and keeping it confidential. So, because we're so generous and grateful for your services, you have the prestigious honor of carrying out Operation Ashbound.
I am humbled by your words. But about the operation, I assume you are referring to the subjects?
Well, not entirely.
This project is among the oldest and most significant undertakings this company has ever done, not to mention one of our most tightly kept secrets.
Too many people are involved and connected to this. We can't run the risk of assigning them somewhere else and more employees discovering something they wish they hadn't.
Are you sure? I'm not one to question orders, but this is one you can't go back on.
You know our policy, Advocate. It's the only rule we've ever given you.
No.
Loose.
Ends.
Of course, I understand. The operation will be carried out immediately.
And what of our red-haired nuisance?
It's taken some time, but I believe I found out where he's been hiding. He arrived in Fiji over a week ago. Police filed a report saying he took a rowboat out to sea that same night and got swallowed up by the ocean. Hasn't been seen since.
Can't be. He's too stubborn to let a little water kill him.
The fact that he's here to begin with is way more than a coincidence. If he knows what occurred on that island, then it's even more crucial you find him before he opens his mouth.
I'll arrange to have a private jet ready and waiting for you in about an hour. Gives you just enough time to carry out the operation. Cleanse the warehouse of all that filth.
As always, handle this matter whichever way you wish. Just try not to burn the place down. The property and its locations are still quite valuable, after all.
As of now, Project Ascension is classified as Category 0. Shut down effective immediately. We don't care how you do it, just get the job done as quickly as possible and let us worry about the cover-up.
Of the three of you, I didn't expect to hear such cruel, heartless words from the mediator.
Normally I'd find a simpler alternative, but desperate times call for drastic measures. Kill them all, don't let any escape, and ensure that every piece of evidence is destroyed completely, no traces. Do it before I change my mind.
It'll be done. You can be assured of that.
Good luck.
Damn, just when I was getting used to this place. Oh well, suppose it's high time for a little change.